Suspended Exaro CEO Nombasa Sengwa resigned with immediate effect on Wednesday, 5th February, after fewer than 3 years at the helm of the coal miner. Daily Maverick has obtained Sengwa's resignation letter dated 5th February 2025, in which she cites being formally charged with Exaro for conflict of interest and a breach of duty as one of the reasons for her immediate resignation. She has also resigned as a board member of Exaro. As a member of Exaro's Social, Ethics and Responsibility Committee on the board, Sengwa would have had to submit her resignation to Geoffrey Quena, the company's board chair, who would accept it or reject it. Exaro confirmed Sengwa's resignation on Thursday, 6th February, to its shareholders on the JSE's Stock Exchange News Service. Exaro's finance director, Ryan Kopeska, has been appointed acting CEO. Quena said Exaro has accepted Sengwa's resignation, and Sengwa's resignation follows days after she was unsuccessful in her court challenging her pension by Exaro. The challenge was overturned and she was ordered to pay costs of the legal action. At least 29 bodies of migrants have been recovered in 2 locations in the southeast and west of Libya, a security directorate and the Libyan Red Crescent said on Thursday. The Al-Wahat District Security Directorate said in a statement that 19 bodies were discovered in a mass grave in a farm in Jikara area, some 441 kilometers from Benghazi, Libya's second largest city, and said the deaths were related to smuggling activities. At the end of January, Al-Wahat Criminal Investigation Department said it had freed 263 migrants from different sub-Saharan nationalities, saying they were being held by a smuggling in extremely poor human and health conditions. Separately, the Libyan Crescent said on Facebook late Thursday evening that its volunteers recovered the bodies of 10 migrants earlier in the day after their boat sank off Dila port in the city of Zawiya, some 40 kilometers from Tripoli, the capital. Morocco stopped 78,685 migrants from illegally crossing into EU territory in 2024, up 4.6%. A year earlier, the Interior Ministry said on Thursday. The figures highlight growing migratory pressure in an unstable regional environment, the ministry said in response to questions. Among the migrants, 58% were from West Africa, 12% from North Africa, where Morocco is located, and 9% from East and Central, along being a major launch pad for African migrants aiming to reach Europe through the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, or by jumping the fence surrounding the Spanish enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla in northern Morocco. Last year, there were 14 group attempts to cross into Ceuta and Melilla, compared with 6 in 2023, the ministry said. Moroccan authorities rescued 18,645 would-be migrants from on-sea 4, up 10.8% from 2023, it said. Last month, as many as 50 migrants may have drowned in the latest deadly wreck involving people trying to make the Atlantic crossing from West Africa to Spain's Canary Islands, a migrant rights group said. 9 officials from the Ministry of Finance have been charged with 11 counts, including money laundering, electronic fraud, causing financial loss, abuse of office, and corruption for the 60 billion central bank heist. The anti-corruption court in Kampala remanded the officials after the arrest on Tuesday, marking a dramatic turn in a case that had initially drawn little action from authorities, despite the Bank of Uganda acknowledging the fraud. The prosecution told the court that Seal Makula, along with Paul Lumumba, Mala, Jennifer Muhulizi, Mubarak Nsamba, Mark Kasuku, Tony Yawa, Deborah Kusima, Bettina Nayebare, and Judith Ashaba diverted funds meant for debt repayments for to the World Bank and African Development Fund into accounts in the UK and Japan. Court documents show that a $6.134 million debt serving repayment to the World Bank was instead sent to Roadway Company in Japan, with the money laundering in an account at MFUFG Bank on November 12. Similarly, $8.569 million intended for the African Development Bank was paid to NJS International in London on September 28. Prosecutors sought a criminal summons for Pedicine Twesingomwe, the third accused, arguing and Ms. Nakayaze remanded all the accused until February 18, when the case will return for mention. Prince Karim Al Husseini Aga Khan IV, the revered leader of the global Ismaili Muslim community, will be buried on Sunday. His funeral ceremony will take place at the Ismaili in Lisbon on Saturday, gathering community leaders, Portuguese officials, and international dignitaries, according to the Ismaili Inamat. His burial will be a private ceremony in Aswan, Egypt, a place of deep spiritual significance. Who passed away in Lisbon at 88 on Tuesday, was renowned for his philanthropy and leadership spanning nearly 7 decades. Through the Aga Khan Development Network, he dedicated his life to humanitarian efforts, funding schools, hospitals, and electrification projects across Africa and Asia. His son, Prince Rahim Al Husseini, was named the 50th hereditary Imam on Wednesday, continuing the family's legacy of spiritual and social guidance. The Aga Khan title, meaning commanding chief, signifies his lineage as a direct descendant of Prophet Muhammad through Imam Ali and Fatima. The global Ismaili community, with approximately 15 million followers, is spread across Central Asia, the Middle East, South Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. Beyond philanthropy, Aga Khan IV upheld his family's passion for international competitions. His passing marks the end of an era, leaving behind a legacy of faith, service, and an enduring commitment to progress. Aga Khan IV to be laid to rest in Egypt on Sunday. Africa's leading public health official will write to the U.S. Secretary of the State on Thursday to highlight how the U.S. aid freeze is threatening the lives of people across the continent and efforts to contain disease outbreaks that could ultimately impact Americans. Jean Kaseya, head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, will raise concerns with Marco Rubio about the impact on patients with disease like HIV and the risk of an mpox pandemic, also fueled by conflict in eastern Congo, he told reporters. When I got the information about the pause, I was alarmed, Kaseya said. How can we respond to all of the ongoing outbreaks if we don't have funding? Kaseya wrote to African leaders over the weekend, warning that without urgent intervention to plug the financial gaps caused by the U.S. freeze and other governments cutting aid budgets, there could be an additional 2 to 4 million deaths from preventable diseases a year on the continent. This pause will not just affect Africa, but also the U.S., he said, warning that disease outbreaks will spread further without fully funded efforts to stop them. Conflict was also threatening health response in parts of Africa, Kaseya added, which he included in both letters. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels have seized control of a mining town in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo's DRC South Kivu province. 8 sources said on Wednesday, in an apparent violation of a unilateral ceasefire they declared this week. The capture of Nyabibwe on Lake Kivu takes the rebels a step closer to the provincial capital, Bukavu, some 70 kilometers south. A city the rebels said last week they had no intention of capturing. M23 announced a ceasefire on Monday. 8 people, including local officials, a civil society representative, rebels, and an international security source, confirmed Nyabibwe had fallen to the rebels. There have been clashes since 5 a.m. and it was at 9 a.m. that the town fell into the hands of the rebels. They are in the center of the town at the moment, said the civil society leader, who, like other sources, spoke on condition of anonymity. Nyabibwe, where mines produce coltan and other metals, is a commercial hub more than halfway between Goma, the capital of North Kivu province, that the rebels took last week, and Bukavu. The RC's communications minister, Patrick Muyaya, told reporters rebels violated the ceasefire at night and were facing resistance from Congolese armed forces around Nyabibwe. Colonel Nanga, leader of the Congo River Alliance Rebel Coalition, that includes M23, confirmed the group moved into Nyabibwe. They attacked us and we defended ourselves, he told reporters. This advance would indicate M23 had renewed push towards Bukavu that the group launched after they seized Goma last week. The RC military court issued an international arrest warrant for Nanga on Tuesday, accusing him of war crimes and treason. The Trump administration on Thursday seized the second plane belonging to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's government that is currently in the Dominican Republic. U.S. Secretary of the State Marco Rubio watched as American officials affixed the seizure warrant to the plane during a visit to Santo Domingo, the last stop of his 5-nation tour of Latin America. Carrying out the seizure required that Rubio sign off on a waiver to a freeze that President Donald Trump imposed foreign aid to pay more than $230,000 in storage and maintenance fees, according to a State Department document obtained by the Associated Press. It also required approval by the U.S. Department of Justice, which said the plane was used by a Venezuelan state-owned oil and natural gas company facing sanctions. An investigation showed that the company bought the plane in the U.S. in 2017, sent it to Venezuela, and it was serviced multiple times using American parts, the department said. The plane is a Dassault Falcon 200 that has been used by Maduro and top aides, including his vice president and defense minister, to travel the world, including visits to Greece, Turkey, Russia, and Cuba, in what Washington says are violations of U.S. sanctions, according to the State Department. The seizure of the plane comes just a week after President Donald Trump's envoy for special missions, Richard Grenell, has met with Maduro to discuss the repatriation of Venezuelan nationals who illegally entered the United States. Grenell returned with 6 Americans who had been detained in Venezuela. Panama President Jose Raul Molino has accused the U.S. of spreading lies and falsehoods after the U.S. State Department claimed American government vessels were no longer required to pay a fee to transit through the Panama Canal. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has since rolled back on his department's claim, but called the fee for American vessels absurd due to a threat binding the U.S. to protect the canal if it comes under attack. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly voiced his desire to regain control of the 1-kilometer passage that links the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans across the Central American country. All vessels are required to pay a fee based on size and type for crossing the waterway, but U.S. ships have priority of passage. In a post on X on Wednesday, the State Department wrote, U.S. government vessels can now transit the Panama Canal without charge fees, saving the U.S. government millions of dollars a year. Molino reacted to the statement by saying he rejects this method of managing bilateral relations on the basis of lies and falsehoods. He said he asked his ambassador in Washington to take firm steps to reject the claim, calling it simply and plainly intolerable. Molino added that U.S. government vessels, including Navy vessels, paid $6 to $7 million a year for the right of passage. Argentina's presidential office said on Wednesday that President Javier Milei had taken the decision to ban gender change treatments and surgeries for minors, as well as impose limits on trans women being housed inside women's prisons. In a press conference, presidential spokesperson Manuel Adoni said the ban would include hormone therapy and followed similar pushbacks in legislation on trans rights in countries such as the UK, Sweden, Finland and the United States, and sought to protect children's health. The announcement comes days after thousands of Argentines protested in favor of LGBT plus rights after Milei made a speech in Davos, Switzerland, in which he questioned feminism, diversity, inclusion, abortion, environmentalism and gender ideology, calling progressive policies a cancer that must be extirpated. The president cannot modify a law by decree, and if he tries, we will go to the judiciary and the inter-American courts if necessary. The Argentina LGBT plus Federation said on X, noting that the existing laws do not allow gender surgery for minors. Gender ideology taken to extremes and applied to children by force or psychological coercion clearly constitutes child abuse, the office said in a statement. Gender surgeries are very rarely performed on children worldwide, and trans minors must generally be medically evaluated and diagnosed with gender dysphoria before starting puberty blockers or hormonal therapies. Milei, a far-right libertarian, will also decree that prisoners be housed according to their gender registered at the time of committing the crime. His office said, regardless of this, it added no trans woman will be housed in a women's prison if convicted for sexual crimes, human trafficking or violent crimes against women. The decision will permit a much more reasonable system that guarantees the security of all women inmates, and ends the insanity pushed by the nefarious gender ideology, Adoni said. U.S. Georgia has temporarily halted President Donald Trump's plan offering incentives to federal workers to voluntarily resign before a Thursday midnight deadline. Federal George O'Toole Jr. said the plan would be paused until a hearing on Monday when he could determine the merits of the lawsuits filed by federal employee unions, reported CBS, the BBC's U.S. partner. The offer is part of an ongoing effort by the Trump administration to slash the size of the federal government. The White House says more than 40,000 employees have accepted the offer to resign in exchange for pay until 30th September. Some workers have voiced confusion about the terms of the deal. The other came hours before Thursday deadline for federal workers to accept the offer. A lawyer for the Justice Department said federal employees would be notified that the deadline had been paused, CBS reported. The White House appeared to see the temporary halt as a way to increase the number of resignations. We are grateful to the judge for extending the deadline so more federal workers who refuse to show up to the office can take the administration up on this very gorgeous once-in-a-lifetime offer, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in a statement. An Office of Personnel Management (OPM) statement said the agency will continue processing resignations until an extended deadline of 23:59 local time on Monday. Federal judge in Seattle on Thursday accused Donald Trump of ignoring the rule of law for political and personal gain as he declared an executive order that the Republican president signed seeking to curtail birthright citizenship to be constitutional. There was applause in the courtroom after U.S. District Judge Coheno extended an order he had issued 2 weeks ago, temporarily blocking Trump's order from being implemented into a nationwide injunction lasting indefinitely. It has become ever more apparent that to our president, the rule of law is both an impediment to his policy goals, said Coheno, an appointee of Republican former Reagan. The rule of law is, according to him, something to navigate around or simply ignore whether that be for political or personal gain. Trump's administration is expected to appeal the judge's decision. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The judge's ruling came in a lawsuit by the Democratic-led states of Washington, Arizona, Illinois, and Oregon, and several pregnant women who argue that Trump's order violates a right enshrined in the U.S. Constitution's Fourth Amendment that provides that anyone born in the United States is a citizen. Trump's order directed U.S. agencies to refuse to recognize the citizenship of children born in the United States after February 19 if neither the mother or father is a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. Trump signed this order, part of his sweeping hard immigration policies, on his first day back in office on January 20th. Cohen's nationwide preliminary injunction is one of two issued by federal judges so far, blocking Trump's administration from implementing the order. NCAA changed its participation policy for transgender athletes on Thursday, limiting competition in women's sports to athletes who were assigned female at birth. The move came one day after President Donald Trump signed an executive order intended to ban transgender athletes from girls' and women's sports. The order gives federal agencies latitude to withhold federal funding from entities that do not abide by Title IX in alignment with the Trump administration's view, which interprets sex as a gender someone was assigned at birth. The NCAA policy change effective immediately and applies to all athletes regardless of previous eligibility reviews. The NCAA has some 1,100 member schools with more than 500,000 athletes, easily the largest governing body for college athletics in the U.S. We strongly believe that clear, consistent, and uniform eligibility standards would best serve today's student-athletes instead of a patchwork of conflicting state laws and court decisions, NCAA President Charlie Baker said. To that end, President Trump's order provides a clear national standard. The NCAA's decision was hailed by former Kentucky swimmer Riley, a vocal advocate of banning transgender athletes from women's sports. Gaines, who was at the White House signing ceremony with Trump, was among more than a dozen college athletes who filed a lawsuit against the NCAA last year, accusing it of violating their Title X rights by allowing transgender women Leah Thomas to compete at the national championships in 2022. Over the past year, however, transgender athletes have been targeted by critics who say their participation in women's sports is unfair and a potential safety risk. It became a major talking point in Trump's re-election campaign, even though there is believed to be a very small number of transgender athletes. Baker last year said that he knew only of 10 transgender athletes in the NCAA. The NCAA's revised policy permits athletes assigned male at birth to practice with women's teams and receive benefits such as medical care. We'll go on a short break now, and when we return, we'll continue with the rest of our stories. Please stay with us. Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte said on Friday she had been preparing since last year for impeachment and would welcome on her defense team her firebrand father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, if interested to join. Sara Duterte said she had not read the complaint against her endorsed by a majority of lower house members, but her lawyers were gearing up for a trial in the Senate. That has said that could take place in June. Asked during the press conference if her resignation was an option, she said, "We are not there yet. Those things are still too far off." Duterte's remarks were her first since the lower house impeached her on Wednesday, charging her with culpable violation of the Constitution, graft and corruption, other crimes and betrayal of public trust. She has denied wrongdoing. It stemmed from allegations she misused public funds while Vice President and Education Minister, amassed unexplained wealth and threatened the lives of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the first and the lower house speaker. On Friday, she again reiterated she had made no assassination threat. Duterte said her 79-year-old father was welcome to join her defense team if he wants to, adding that he will not lead the team given his age. Duterte is a former city mayor and prosecutor who was Philippine president from 2016 to 2022. The vice president has been embroiled in a long-running row with former ally Marcos and has previously dismissed moves against her as politically motivated. Real estate private equity firm Go Capital and Singapore-based investor Patience Capital Group have completed the acquisition of Tokyo Plaza Ginza, a prime mall in central Tokyo, in a deal worth more than $1 billion, Gao's Japan head said on Friday. The Hong Kong-based investor said he had formed a joint venture for the acquisition of management of the property, in which it holds 91% with the remaining 9% held by Patience Capital Group. The deal is the latest in a run of major property transactions in the hot Japanese market. Canadian firm Brookfield Asset Management last month closed 2 real estate investments in Japan for a total of $1.6 billion. With favorable macroeconomic fundamentals supporting Japan's real estate sector, this is a highly opportune time to invest, Gao's head of Japan, Isabella Low, said in a statement. The Tokyo Plaza transaction is Gao's largest in Japan, where it has been operating since 2014. The firm has roughly 655 billion yen, which is approximately $4.22 billion in assets under management in Japan, which represents 40% growth over the past 12 months, Low said. Reserve Bank of India is set to allow trading in bond forwards that long-term investors can use to manage their interest rate risk, the central bank said on Friday. We have been receiving feedback about the need to allow forward contracts in government securities to enable further market development, RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra said while announcing his first ever monetary policy decision